Welcome. I'd like to call the April 12, 2021 Hermiston City Council and Urban Renewal Agency to order with a declaration of the quorum. All members present except for Mr. Barone, who is excused. Please join me in the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening and welcome this evening. On your agenda, we have the Hermiston School District up first, but they've asked to move to later in the agenda, and so hopefully we get to see them later and get an update from the school district. Followed by that, we have a special presentation this evening. Mr. Smith, you want to kick that off?
Yes, so the Hispanic Advisory Committee asked that we recognize the primary staff member that supports them, and so Mr. Garcia wasn't able to make it, but I've asked Councilor Ron to give us a little description of why they wanted to thank her, and I have a little something over here, and the mayor has a certificate.
Okay, so for me, it's a pleasure to brag about Lily. Lily is our go-to person. She has been phenomenal at making sure that we know when our meetings are happening, arranging or helping remind our speakers whenever we've had them attend our meetings. She is a great representative of the city when it comes to, being the liaison and making events happen as well. So since we know that Lily doesn't like the attention, we thought, why not? I know that Jose mentioned it at the meeting, and Lily was like, no. And we said, yes. So thank you, Mr. Smith, for providing this as a token of recognition for all the work that she has done. We know that the PAC is not the only meeting that she takes notes for. There are numerous other committees that she's a part of. And I think as a mom, I see that she's also giving up a lot of her evenings to be able to do that. A lot of the time she could be missing out on birthdays or other events, that are in particular important to her family. So I appreciate all the work that she does, and I know that she does it, to the best of her ability and not wanting to, shine the light on her. So I think that even makes it even better, that she's out there doing just a great job, and we certainly didn't want her to think that her work was not noticed. So on behalf of the Hispanic Advisory Committee, I am just one member, but the rest want to say thank you for all the work that you do.
As if her head wasn't big enough already.
Well, at one of the meetings she was called the Prime Minister or the Queen.
Yeah. What is the little tag on the front of your desk say?
She who must be obeyed.
Right.
Not. Thank you, and City Manager Smith for getting me that.
For those of you that don't know, Lily, she's our executive assistant at the city. She's also the chair, or the council's executive assistant as well. She also does many meetings and takes minutes and organizes everything and always makes us look presentable and good. And she's just done a phenomenal job since she's come to the city, and the growth that we've seen out of her has just been amazing. And she has been a huge asset, so it's always a pleasure to recognize the assets in our community and pay special attention to them once in a while, because they are important to us and they do such a great job. And so taking time out like this evening to recognize those people is important. So thank you. Yeah, do you want to say anything? Your one and only time to speak at City Council meeting. You don't want to. Tack out your tongue for once. All right. So we're at the first opportunity for citizen input on non-agenda items. So if there are people here this evening that would like to speak to the city council and it's not on the agenda this evening, please come up to the microphone up front, introduce yourself by name and address, direct your comments to me, and try and limit the discussion to not more than 5 minutes. Anyone? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Before we go to the consent agenda, one of the things I wanted to do this evening, if the council is okay with it, I would like to move up the Eotech presentation to item 10B. So instead of it being 10 or 11B, I'd like it to be 10B, if that's okay with the council. Issue with that? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Items A through G, are any of those need to be pulled by the council?
I would ask item G be pulled by the council. It's a certification of my own election results.
Okay. Any other items? Okay. So can I get approval, or is there any public comment on the consent agenda items A through F? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A through F?
So
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Bremer, seconded by Councilor Duran. Yes.
Yes.
That we approve consent agenda items A through F. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Since Councilor Spicer Coon pulled G, why did you want to pull G?
It's a certification of my own election results. I probably shouldn't be voting to certify.
Okay, that is very good of you. So you are declaring a conflict of interest?
Yes, that's a conflict of
Okay.
interest. And I should step away probably.
Gary, does he need to step away? Yes.
Yes, I think the council will require that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, so consent agenda item G was the certification of the March 29, 2020 special election results in which Councilor Spicer Coon was elected to his position. Any public comment on that? Okay. Seeing none, can I have a roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with one abstention due to conflict of interest. Oh, can I get a motion
Think
to
you didn't have a
approve
motion.
certifying the result?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilor Bremer, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we approve the certification of March 9, 2021 special election results. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Numbers don't change. Still 6-0 with one abstention. All right, Mr. Spicer Coon, you can come back. Yeah, thank you for correcting me, Mr. President.
So I get to take next.
All right, so now we're on to the oath of office. Alan Armstrong, are you doing that?
I am. If Councilor Spicer Coon, if you can stand and then raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I state your name, do solemnly affirm
I, Philip Spicer Keene, do solemnly affirm
that I am duly qualified to hold the office of the city councilor for the city of Hermiston,
that I am duly qualified to hold the office of City Councilor for the City of Hermiston,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and the Charter of the City of Hermiston,
and the Charter of the City of Hermiston,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office to the best of my ability.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Welcome again, Mr. Spicer Coon. It's an honor and privilege to serve with you, and we appreciate your willingness to volunteer your time to serve the citizens of the city of Hermiston. So, on to public hearings. We have a public hearing this evening to discuss surplus of 7.18 acres of vacant land at 4 and 20804 4N2804A, located at 2025 Northwest 11th Street, to develop senior housing, resolution number 2176, discussed afterwards. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest from the council? Seeing none, hearing guidelines will now be presented by City Manager Bonnie Smith.
Clint, do you have those?
City Manager Smith, it's at the third page on here.
City Council is holding a public hearing regarding a surplus of 7.18 acres of vacant land at 4N2804A, located at 2025 Northwest 11th Street, to develop senior housing. The City Council will take public testimony on this issue and make a decision at this meeting. The hearing process will begin with a staff report by Assistant City Manager Mark Morgan. Following presentation of the staff report, the City Council will take public testimony. Testimony will be received by supporters of the proposal first, followed by neutral testimony, and then opponents of the proposal will testify. The council requests that all people wishing to testify approach the microphone and give their name and mailing address before testifying. People wishing to testify should limit testimony to not more than 5 minutes unless a longer period is provided by the City Council. Written testimony will be accepted from all parties. After everyone wishing to testify has had an opportunity to speak, the City Council will close the public hearing and enter deliberations. Once the public hearing is closed, no further testimony will be received.
Thank you. We're going to open the hearing. Assistant City Manager Mark Morgan will present staff report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this evening we're going to be discussing whether or not to surplus 7.18 acres of the green property. So the proposal is to surplus approximately 7 acres of the green property. Most of the council was on the council last August when we first presented this concept originally, but because a handful of you were not on the council at that time, I included a link to that staff report in this evening's staff report, and then I'll also do just a high-level overview of some of those concepts of why we were heading down this direction. So you can see this is an aerial of the city. The area outlined in red up by the Umatilla River is the overall 20-acre portion of the green property. This is an aerial looking off to the west. This is Northwest 11th Street. This is the Hermiston drain ditch, the sewer treatment plant located here, and the Umatilla River just off to the distance. The overall 20-acre site of the green property is roughly there, with about 5 acres of it being just difficult to see, but just beyond that ridge line. So the property, just a quick background, 20 acres overall, originally acquired back in 2005. Since that time, a single-family home and several shops have been removed from the property. The original purpose was to see if we could apply treated sewer effluent to the property to reduce temperature discharges into the Umatilla River. We installed several monitoring wells, tested that concept several times in 2006, 2007, and then ultimately abandoned that process, and the property has remained vacant since then. The property is located inside of the city limits, but is surrounded by unincorporated county on 3 sides, with the sewer treatment plant to the north of it being located in the city limits. And the property is zoned R1, or low-density residential zoning. The main reason for the R1 designation is because you can place public facilities such as sewer treatment plants in an R1 zone. So the concept as originally presented back in August was to see if we could surplus approximately 8 acres on the southern edge of the property. Again, the overall 20 acres being roughly outlined in red there, with the potential for seeking development of some form of senior housing on the southern portion of the property. At the time, the intent was to retain the balance of the property to maintain public access to the Umatilla River, which is in the floodplain and is otherwise undevelopable, as well as retaining this area through here, which currently contains the limits of the Hermiston Irrigation District's Hermiston Drain, but also with the potential for future expansion to do some wetland processes to treat our stormwater that we get coming through the city. On August 10th, the City Council directed staff to proceed with advertising 8 acres of the property, specifically for senior housing. Additionally, specifically to advertise it at no cost to stimulate development while retaining 12 acres for future wetland green space and 4 acres for future public access to the Umatilla River. At the time, there were a number of justifications discussed for proceeding down this path. 2020 City Council goals were several, but 3 of them were at issue here. One being fiscal prudence, one being expanding housing options, and then one being economic development. From a fiscal prudence standpoint, it was determined that liquidation of the asset would liquidate an underperforming asset, which actually carries some financial liability on an ongoing basis and generate long-term revenue for the city. Additionally, it was determined that this is an instance where the whole of the property, all 20 acres, are actually worth less than the sum of the parts. This would be similar to taking and selling an old vehicle to a scrapyard for $500, and the scrapyard ends up taking all the pieces off of it and selling it for more than what they purchased it for. So taking a strategic approach to surplusing the property was more likely to generate a higher return in the long run, even if we sell it for or transfer it at no cash contribution immediately. It was also determined that based on the market and the configuration of the property with wetlands running through the property, it was unlikely to return the balance of $420,000 to the utility department mainly because of the removal of the single-family home on the property for the testing that was done in 2005. Additionally, from a fiscal prudence standpoint, it was determined, again, because of the topography and the wetlands located on the property, the most likely development that would go and purchase the property would be low-density, single-family, most likely just a single home, developed to a rural standard, likely to generate very low property tax generation within the city long-term, very low utility fee generation. And actually, there was public comment received at the time by neighbors requesting to just simply purchase the property and then subsequently de-annex it out of the city and ultimately remove it from the city tax rolls. Additionally, as far from a fiscal prudence standpoint, it was determined that most likely, even over the course of 20 years, the actual revenue to the city, including sale revenue, property taxes over 20 years, and utility fees, would unlikely clear more than $400,000 in 20 years. Conversely, it was determined that through a strategic offering only about 8 acres specifically for a targeted type of development, there was potential for the city to see upwards of $3 million in revenues over the course of 20 years. That accounting for $0 in sales revenue initially, but subsequently, if it was able to stimulate development of assessed value in the range of $7 million of improvements, that the city would see property tax generation over 20 years in the range of about $1.1 million, and utility fee user fees in the range of $1.8 million over 20 years. Again, from a fiscal prudence standpoint, the sewer department through the utility fund was the arm of the city that actually outlaid $420,000 in 2005. The generation of long-range utility user fees by offering it strategically for development seems to be the most likely path to returning that revenue back to the sewer utility ratepayers who ultimately outlaid that cash initially. From the other city council goal standpoint, it was determined that a strategic offering of this sort would be basically a direct provision of housing to meet that goal. Also, there were obviously questions about developing housing immediately adjacent to a sewer treatment plant. And so it was felt that offering up this parcel in this manner would still likely result in private development of housing, but also that would allow other properties inside of our urban growth boundary to remain available for other types of development and ultimately help to hold costs low elsewhere in the market while still seeing this development occur within the city. This was an interesting image that I actually took myself here several weeks ago. I was back home in Fruitland, Idaho. We were flying over the city, and I took this image. That is a picture of the city of Fruitland's sewer treatment plant. This is a large subdivision that was completed in 2019-2020 timeframe. And as of several weeks ago, when this image was taken, you can see site prep is occurring on the subdivision to accommodate approximately 30 to 40 new homes immediately adjacent to the sewer treatment plant. One of the housing-related justifications for this process was because we really can't expand our urban growth boundary until we fill up the land that we have inside of it. It was felt that strategically offering a property like this to development would help ensure that we actually did get some development there, but then also that it would be able to act as something of a shield or a barrier to other maybe more developable properties to the south of this, and hopefully encourage more infill development inside of our urban growth boundary in that area, because it's very obvious that people will still develop adjacent to these types of facilities. And the hope is that by having something like this go in and incentivizing it, we can see additional development in that neighborhood. Additionally, City Council goal on economic development, somewhere along the senior housing spectrum, at least in terms of the proposal that you'll be considering later on this evening, certainly will have the potential to create new in-house jobs in some sort of senior housing development that may occur upon that property, but also offering it in to that type of development has the potential to have some of these kind of ancillary benefits of helping to stimulate other kind of third-party healthcare jobs in the community by helping to provide more market demand in the local market for some of these specialty healthcare services by a demographic that accesses healthcare services higher than other members of the population. And then finally, as far as economic development goes, it was felt that offering a property in this manner would help livability for working professionals who may have aging parents that, if not for availability of this type of an asset in the community, may need to leave the community to seek these types of services. And ultimately that helps those working professionals in the community stay in the community and remain near their aging family. Of course, when we're considering surplusing city property, we have to consider alternate uses. I already mentioned we will be retaining the approximately 4 acres that immediately front onto the Umatilla River as river access. It is in the floodplain. The part that we would be surplusing, approximately right there, is about 40 to 50 feet above the Umatilla River. There's quite a bluff located there. Also, this is the general area that would be retained for potential future wetland creation for stormwater. And then also one of the items that was considered for the property there is, of course, some type of recreational field development, that type of thing. But based on the topography of the site itself, development of something like a large flat soccer field or something like that would be more challenging than a lot of other properties throughout the city. And then also, the original purpose for acquiring this property was for the sewer treatment plant. As I mentioned, the concept that was tested back in 2005-2006 was deemed inviable, and that's why the city spent upwards of $20 million upgrading our sewer treatment process so that we can now discharge our water to the adjacent irrigation district and entirely remove that temperature contamination from the Umatilla River. So that purpose is certainly no longer needed. Additionally, the sewer treatment plant owns a significant amount of property further off to the north, and our city engineers feel very comfortable that the amount of property that we have available there just north of the sewer treatment plant is more than enough to accommodate a population surpassing 75,000 people. So certainly unnecessary for the sewer treatment plant's needs. So the process since August, when council directed staff to go down this route, we sent out direct solicitation to all of the existing senior living providers in Hermiston. as well as all current and recent developers in Hermiston, and really basically all developers, not just senior living developers, but really trying to tap into the larger network of all of the developers that occur here in Hermiston. And we received a pretty strong response through that process. We received legitimate response and had a lot of conversations with many different types of interested respondees, including several regional and national real estate investment trusts specializing in senior housing. We received interest from existing Hermiston senior housing providers, as well as a handful of multifamily housing builders and operators, some single-family home builders, as well as a couple of nonprofit housing providers from the Pacific Northwest. The process since then was we had a due date at the end of October for a statement of qualifications from interested parties, as well as a high-level concept of what they would be proposing to do with the property if they received it. The finalists were then invited to submit their more fleshed out concepts after spending a couple more months digging deeper into their proposals by the end of January. Then a review committee composed of Councilor Myers, Councilor Spice-Kuhn, City Planning Commissioner Jim Sheffield, as well as City Manager Smith, City Planner Spencer, and myself reviewed the finalist proposals and recommended that City Council proceed with the process of surplusing the property. We will get into this later on when we have the actual letter of intent to consider, but I wanted to make sure that we go through this a little bit before we get to the actual public hearing on whether or not to dispose of the property. The ultimate developer that has been recommended to come out the other side of this process with the property is a partnership entity named Paradigm Compass. This was an aerial submitted, the schematic overlaid on approximately 7 acres of the property with several different types of senior housing to be provided there. This is just simply a different schematic view of the same proposal. Paradigm Properties, one of the partners, is an Oregon development and investment firm with a specific focus on senior housing. Since they formed in 2008, they've done 17 ground-up developments that represent over 1,000 living units with total value of over $300 million. Compass Senior Living is the other partner of the partnership that is proposing. They're a Eugene-based senior housing operator, and they operate independent living, assisted living, and memory care facilities across 33 different locations in 8 states across the western U.S. The Paradigm Compass team, as a team, they partnered up on projects dating back to 2014. Since that time, they've completed 3 ground-up developments in Oregon, and all of those Oregon developments have all been in smaller communities in Oregon. So the first one in 2018 being Juniper Springs in Redmond. This was very, very similar to kind of our site that they're considering, overall a 7-acre site there, completed in 2018 with assisted living, memory care, and cottage living. This is just some of the images that were submitted as part of their proposal, just to kind of show you the inside of their Juniper Springs facility. In 2019, they completed the Pear Valley development in Central Point on 2.6 acres. That included also assisted living and memory care options. And then just a few months ago, back in the fall of 2020, in Roseburg, they completed the landing project that also included assisted living and memory care services. So the process for this evening, there's really kind of 2 steps to this process. And the first one, as a result of this public hearing, is really specifically tied to just simply the process of officially declaring the property surplus to the city's needs. So accepting this report does not accept the letter of intent to be considered later this evening, and certainly doesn't transfer the property, but it begins that process of surplusing the property. Later on this evening, you'd be asked through a different action to offer the letter of intent to Paradigm Compass, and then that begins the process of final negotiation of a disposition and development agreement with Paradigm Compass that would more or less finalize that process of transferring the property to them. So again, the question for the public hearing this evening is, should the green property be surplus? And with that, completes my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. We'll now open the public testimony, so people wishing to speak are asked to come up to the microphone up front, state their name and mailing address, limit your testimony to less than 5 minutes, direct them to me. And we're going to start with proponents, people in favor who wish to speak. Are there any? Okay. How about any neutral parties who wish to speak? Is that microphone on, Jackie? Button on the front side.
Jackie Linton, Hermiston, Oregon. I just want to bring up again a subject that I brought up before about giving a small part of acreage to homeless for the housing that, I can't remember her name right now, that she brought up, but to give a small part for, because I think every city has a responsibility to help the less fortunate, and that'll be a good spot for them. They'll be close to town, and hopefully something will be set aside. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Others? Okay. Any opponents?
Good evening. My name is Matt France. I'm with Guardian Angel Homes. I came from Dalton Gardens, Idaho, drove here today, but I have an assisted living facility here in Hermiston at 540 Northwest 12th Street. And I am here to speak in opposition to this motion being considered by the city. Is the limit of 5 minutes, is that applicable here, or may I be granted a little bit longer if I go over?
Well, council okay with that? Yeah. What are you talking about?
I'm
How
sorry.
long are you talking?
I'm not sure. I'll be as quick as I can, and I'll watch for somebody to shut me down.
Try to be brief. Thank you.
So I did want to just speak briefly about the industry. Is everyone familiar with assisted living and memory care, just at least at a kind of cursory level? Okay, so here in Hermiston, within our industry, there's a lot that goes into being successful in running assisted living facilities. But the two biggest things that you really have to master or do well at in order to have a chance to be successful is census, which is our measure of occupancy. The census is the number of residents that you have. And then you have to be able to crack the staffing nut, which is really difficult. Both of these are very challenging right now within Hermiston. So those two things specifically I'll talk to a little bit, census and staffing. So when thinking about the Hermiston market for assisted living, right now there are 4 providers, assisted living providers, that can care for more than just a handful of residents. There are a few adult family homes that may care for 3 or 4 residents, but by and large, there's 4. There's Guardian Angel Homes, there's Sun Terrace, which is a Regency Pacific property, and they have a representative here. I think he'll be addressing you as well, probably when I'm done. Avamere Assisted Living, there's Ashley Manor, and collectively, those 4 properties have about 241 assisted living units. I've spoken with all of them, or the other 3 besides myself, in the last a couple of them today and then last week, and collected this information to share with you today. So 241 units. I didn't hear the final numbers for the proposal of this green property and what the Paradigm Compass proposal is, but I think it's in the realm of 80-something units. Is that, can somebody confirm? 96, but not counting the independent living. Is it 84? 84 assisted living. So 84 units of assisted living and memory care. That would be more than a third of the existing inventory that we currently have in Hermiston. And I can't imagine any industry where bringing in over a third as many units as you currently have would not be extremely disruptive to that industry. Think about restaurants. I mean, that would be like dropping 100 new restaurants into Hermiston, and imagine what that would do to the existing restaurants. Or homes. I imagine Hermiston probably has in the realm of about 4,000 dwelling units. Imagine if you brought in another 1,500 and just dropped them in, I mean, you know, different places, but imagine how disruptive that would be to the existing. It would be wonderful, probably for rates, as you had all this hyper competition going on, but the companies that are leasing those, the people that are owning those existing dwelling units would be absolutely harmed by an action, something that would be that big and large and difficult to absorb. So 241 units, and in a survey, and then also with my own information, which I thought was here at my fingertips. One moment. Out of those 241 units between those 4 providers, as of today, we have 194 units that are occupied. So we have sort of surplus, I guess you might say, what is that, 41 plus 6, so 47 units of surplus. And 47 may not sound like a lot, but when your base is only 241 to begin with, that's a vacancy of 20%. And this is an industry that has a break even well north typically of 80%. Of course, it varies from one company to another, but 85% is often kind of considered a break-even point for that census or that occupancy within the industry. I can attest to the financial difficulties and impacts that we've had operating in Hermiston for the last couple of years. Is that for me?
It is.
How long you got?
Well, I can boil it down. Okay. Maybe 2 minutes.
Perfect, thank you.
Is that allowed?
Yep.
Thank you. So the last thing I want to do that I get, in staffing has been a tremendous challenge. And they talked about, you know, these 50 jobs that would be created. Well, I don't know that 50 jobs would be created. There would be a need for 50 more jobs. This is an extreme challenge for my company, as well as the other ones, the other assisted living providers that I spoke to already, finding and retaining employees to fill shifts. We run 24/7. We cannot have a shift down. We can't leave those residents. They're vulnerable. The residents who will harm themselves out, but not intentionally, but just because of their diminished mental acuity or physical abilities. And so, again, dropping in, you know, such a massive growth of new units that need to be staffed would create an even greater challenge than what we see today. So I don't think there's a need for additional assisted living and memory care. Now, that's not to say that of their own free will and choice that Paradigm Compass couldn't build, but I don't think it's appropriate for the city to offer an incentive to bring them in when there already is enough sort of stock or supply of assisted living units to meet the demands of Hermiston and the surrounding communities as well. I question, and I won't go into this because I think it would take too long, but I question the notion that the land that has an intrinsic or inherent value of $400,000 can be inflated to have a value more than $3 million by giving it away. The way I look at it is the city would actually be losing that $400,000. In a maybe 30-second explanation so I can wrap up, if Paradigm Compass truly feels that this is an investment worth taking, the development, they'll do it whether they're given that free land or not. My own company did it 5 years ago. We invested $3 million into some land right behind our property to build 2 new memory care homes, which we did. We didn't have to be given free land to do it. We saw it as an opportunity that needed to be filled, and so we filled it. I think there are probably many other better uses of $400,000 that could be gained by selling the land today and putting it into, there's a whole lot of different things. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate you. Your comment. Thank you. Others? I will give you the same 7 minutes or whoever else wants to speak.
And there's no need for that, honestly. I don't, 5 minutes would be perfect. So, my name is John Price, and I am here to represent Regency Pacific Management, who is the management company over Sun Terrace Hermiston, located at 1550 Northwest 11th Street. And we are an operator of a total capacity of 97 occupancy at that assisted living. So today we're currently running a census of 60, and that puts us right around an average about 68% occupied at this particular point. Pulling some numbers for this meeting tonight, 2017 we ran 76% occupied, 2018 72% occupied, 2019 70% occupied, 2020, given the pandemic, we went down to 64% occupied. And for the first quarter of 2020, we're currently running at occupancy of 70%. So, and those are year-to-date numbers too. And as Matt had mentioned, is our break-even point is at 80%, to be running at 80%. And as you can tell, the erosion in this market of the census has continued since 2017 moving forward. So is there a need for an additional assisted living in this particular market? I don't believe so. I think we have a number of beds available for our current occupancy now. Looking into the future, I think if Hermiston is looking to donate, the city of Hermiston is looking to donate that land, what about low-income senior housing? So, you know, the state of Oregon a couple of years ago changed their metrics on what qualifies a Medicaid individual to come and live in an assisted living community. And over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years, many of our residents that were residing with us have dropped below the level of care based off their ADL needs, and they've been seeking opportunities to move out of our community, our assisted living community, into the Hermiston community. But unfortunately, the subsidized housing and the low-income housing in this area is anywhere from 2 to 3 year wait list. So you have your residents in Hermiston that have been living here their entire lives, have had to go to a senior living community for one reason or another, and now they're being dropped below a level of care by the new matrix with the state program. And in order for them to find housing, they're having to move completely out of the Hermiston area. So again, is there room for additional assisted living in this particular market? I personally don't believe so. When the market study was done, I don't think any of our competitors or partners in the community were ever reached out for what our census occupancies were running back in October of 2020. I mean, during a pandemic, when the senior housing living was hit the hardest, obviously those numbers got to be skewed a little bit just simply because of the fact of the pandemic, and we were running 64% occupied year to date. So I don't think there's a need for an additional assisted living. Senior housing, low income, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Are there others? So, Gary, normally we have an opportunity to reapproach by the proponents, is that right? If a proponent is here and they want to comment in response to the opponent? No, I'm asking if that's a normal process, right?
It would be a normal process under, you know, a planning application, but since the city is the applicant, so it's not the same process as far as the rebuttal on this particular action.
So there's no rebuttal necessary in this action? Is that right?
I didn't hear it announced. I did not hear rebuttal.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on how the process was supposed to go in this public hearing.
And they also waived their open.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so this hearing is now closed, and we'll open it up for council discussion. Comments, questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor? I
Yes.
have a few.
Maria?
The first one is, when is the city, when do we expect to get information back on the census?
The latest that I've seen as far as the U.S. Census, and they're talking about a census of their rooms or their facilities, but the U.S. Census, we don't anticipate anything before August, and likely October would be more likely.
Okay. The second question that I have is, do we know, is there a study that shows what is the projected rate of growth or people moving into that age range where they would require assisted living or low-income senior living housing?
Mr. Spencer, have any of our planning documents analyzed that in an age?
Not really from an age standpoint, no. We project out on our current demographics how they are, but we don't really project the different levels over the next 20 years, how we expect each one to grow.
Because based on some of the reports that I've read as part of our information, we're projected to grow up to, what, 25, based on like the dwellings that we talked about at the last meeting, up to 25,000, correct, in our area. So I was just wondering, being that, a lot of the comments in the school's perspective, people don't think that there's a lot of growth happening there, and there is. And it could very well be that in this situation too. We may not see the growth now, but if there was such a study that would inform us as to what those numbers would be in the coming years, I think that would be a valuable thing for us to have, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mary. Just as a reminder to the council, this public hearing is about surplusing of the acreage. We haven't made any decision about what we're going to do with that surplus. We're just talking right now about whether or not the council wishes to surplus the property. Any other questions or thoughts, comments?
I couldn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry. Was I not speaking in the microphone? Am I not loud enough?
No,
Okay. So I'm sorry if you couldn't hear what I was saying. Just a reminder to the council that this is discussing the surplusing of this property. We haven't decided who or what we're going to do with the surplus, but the public hearing is about surplusing and whether the council wishes to identify this specific piece of property to surplus. Am I accurate in that?
That's correct. The next item, the resolution is a combination of that surplusing action and a discussion of what the council might desire to do with it.
Okay. And we can go into more depth at that point.
That's correct.
Okay. So plenty of time for conversation. Any other comments from the council? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve staff report as presented?
So moved. Second.
Then moved by Councilor Davis, second by Councilor Harden, that we approve the staff report as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Okay, now on to resolution number 2176, declaring the green property as surplus property and approval of the letter of intent to develop senior housing. Mr. Smith.
Yes, so now I'll ask Mr. Morgan to go in a little bit more detail about more of the specifics of the proposal and then request to enter into a letter of intent with a proposed developer.
Yes, so we already went into a lot of detail about the property itself. This presentation is more specific to the actual letter of intent, which would be approved and extended as a result of approving the resolution before you see. So the proposal is to extend this letter of intent to Paradigm Compass, and the letter of intent basically just establishes the intent to transfer the property to Paradigm Compass LLC for the purposes of developing senior housing. Throughout the RFP process, this was always seen as a two-step process, which would be after confidential presentations by various developers and review by staff. This would really become a first opportunity to bring the selected proposal out to a public meeting where we go into a letter of intent, gives the council the option to see the proposal in a public meeting, ask questions, those types of things, and then from there we proceed on into the next stage, which would then be a disposition and development agreement, which we hope we would reach by the end of May. So approval of the letter of intent this evening still does not actually transfer the property. It just simply outlines council's intent to transfer this property, and then still you'd have to approve an actual disposition agreement at a later date. So again, the property specifically in question is the 7.18 acres of the larger 20-acre green property. The project as specified in the letter of intent only calls for a requirement of 75 senior housing units. It does not specify the exact mix of housing units, as that we anticipate would be determined by the local market need. We do have Christopher Looney here this evening. He's with Paradigm Compass Properties, and he will be presenting some additional information in a little bit. And so he had mentioned earlier what the full build-out potential for the property could be, but the minimum base project in the letter of intent at this point would simply be just 65 senior housing units in a mixture as determined by the local market. The timeline contemplated in the letter of intent would be that both parties would work together to hopefully reach final terms of a disposition and development agreement by the end of May. Upon final adoption and execution of a disposition and development agreement, then the developer would have an additional 90 days to do additional deeper due diligence on the property. Additionally, the developer would have 1 year as a financing period to raise the capital necessary to construct the project. One of the timeline triggers would be that construction on the project would have to commence at the site in spring of 2022. The developer would have a little over a year to complete construction, and then the facility would be open late summer, early fall timeframe of 2023. The letter of intent also discusses zoning on the property, which is R1, and City Council has already initiated the process to allow for a text amendment to the R1 zone to allow for senior housing clusters in R1 zone properties, and the letter of intent makes it contingent on the city to make sure that zoning gets approved. Finally, very important components of the letter of intent and an eventual disposition and development agreement are the clawbacks and covenants on the property. It's very common. We see clawbacks and covenants very often in things like federal grants, those types of things where the government is providing resources in some form or fashion, either to another government or a business entity, and in exchange for something other than financial remuneration, it's provided something like land, that type of thing, but without meeting certain criteria, then some of these clawbacks and covenants come into place. So the clawback portion of the letter of intent would be that if Paradigm Compass doesn't begin site work on the property within 2 years of transfer of the property, then the city can choose between two options to either have Paradigm Compass simply return the property to the city for free, in which case we're simply back to where we started, or again, if it's in the best interest of the city at the time, the city can at that point exercise the right to make Paradigm Compass actually purchase the property from the city for fair market value as determined at the time. So that's the clawback piece. The covenant aspect is that the council is saying that we are providing this in exchange for meeting a public need in senior housing, and so in exchange for that, the facility must be operated as senior housing for at least 25 years. So it can't, 5 years down the road, all of a sudden turn into low-income apartments or something like that. So that's the clawback and covenant portions. So with that kind of ends my portion of this. I mentioned we do have Christopher Looney here this evening with Paradigm Compass, and he could probably provide you with a lot more information about their outfit and what they're proposing to you this evening.
Excellent. It's Christopher, is it Looney? Yep. Do you want to come up for the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me here this evening. Before I start, I would like to just say thank you to Mark and the city, who has been awesome to work with. In this business, we get the pleasure of working with a lot of different city governments. Not all of them are as pleasurable as the city of Hermiston, so big thank you to Mark and everyone in the city. The process has been awesome, so we really appreciate that. So I'm Chris Looney. The name of my company is Paradigm Properties. We're a multifamily and senior housing developer. We're based in Eugene. Since 2008, we've done 17 projects, all of them in the state of Oregon, comprising over 1,000 units of housing. And our partners, Compass Senior Living, also based in Eugene. They're a senior housing operator. They operate 33 communities in 8 states. The 2 principals in Compass Senior Living, my partners, have a combined 40+ years in the senior housing business. All 4 of us are native Oregonians. Like I said, my company, Paradigm, we've done 17 projects, all of them in the state of Oregon. Our partnership was formed in 2014. We knew the principals in Compass on a personal level, and we started talking one day and decided that teaming up and bringing our real estate development expertise along with their senior housing expertise would be a good partnership. We shared a lot of the same values, and we decided that the larger markets in Oregon had plenty of senior housing, and where senior housing was needed was in smaller communities in Oregon. And so that's what we set out to do. Our target was to build new assisted living, memory care, and independent living communities in communities across Oregon, generally smaller than 30,000 people. These are communities that have a need for senior housing, but in general have been ignored by the larger, more institutional senior housing developers. So since that time, since 2014, we've built 3 new ground-up senior living communities in Redmond, Central Point, just outside Medford, and we just opened one in Roseburg. And all of them similar in size and character to the project we're proposing here in Hermiston. All 3 of them very successful. Our 3rd project in Roseburg opened this past fall, so not the best timing for that one, but our lease up has gone well, and they've all been very successful. So prior to beginning a project, we engage a third-party appraisal firm to conduct a market study. We do this for our own internal decision-making, but also before beginning a new project, you have to obtain it's called a certificate of need from the Oregon DHS. So we commission a market study that's done to show that there's adequate demand and adequate need in any given community for a new project like the one that we're proposing. We did have a market study conducted for Hermiston. It was conducted in October of last year, and it did show adequate demand in the market for this project. I have a summary from that market study. No. So that is a 8-page summary from the start of the market study that does show adequate demand in the market for a new senior living community. The reason we hire an appraisal firm is, we rely on independent third-party data from experts to tell us what the market looks like. Aaron Brown and Associates is one of the most well-respected appraisal firms in the industry. They've done market studies for us and for just about every senior living provider in the state of Oregon. They're very well respected. So I'll tell you a little bit about our project. As proposed at the moment, 60 units of assisted living, 24 units of memory care, and 12 independent living cottages. This approach, which we've done in other communities by having different levels of care, the independent living, assisted living, and memory care, allows residents to move in, for example, into the independent living when they're still able to move around, many of them still drive, and then as their need for care increases, they're able to stay in the same community and move into different type of units. So we found that this approach is really good for the residents. Our community will have great amenities, restaurant-style dining, a salon. We'll have a 24-hour care team there to take care of our residents. And what we love about this site is there's lots of room for us to spread out. So we can provide outdoor amenities, walking paths, a dog park. Many of our residents in senior living have pets, and we're very pet friendly. So is my time up, or do I get more time?
And you're part of the presentation for this resolution.
Okay, I'm almost done.
Okay.
Like Mark said in his presentation, which was great, our community will employ over 50 permanent staff and contribute to the tax base. I just recently got our tax bill for our community in Redmond, and that's close to $200,000 a year that community contributes to the tax base. Senior living in general contributes to the tax base, but is not a typical heavy demand on city services. Finally, just so you know about our business model, we are not flippers, we're not merchant builders, we don't build and sell. We still own the 3 projects that we've built, and our plan is to own them for a long time. The project that we're proposing to build here, our business model will be to build it, stabilize it, and own it for a very, very long time. That's our business model. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You said you supply 50 permanent staffers?
There are over 50 permanent jobs at the community, yes.
Oh, that are available?
Right.
But you're not bringing that staff with you?
No, they'd be hired from the local population.
So, Mr. Levine, the letter of intent that the city has agreed to or looks to agree to with you, any provisions in there that give you pause or concern that you can't meet those provisions?
No. In fact, we've discussed the letter of intent with Mark and the city staff, the city council, the other county council, attorney council, and we're very comfortable with it. We're ready to go.
Financing, timeline, staffing. You heard some issues around staffing you mentioned earlier, and you've studied the market as far as employment aspects of that.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
As far as the letter of intent in number 6, the proposed use of property, can those numbers be, are they going to be like 65 total units, and 12 of this, and 24 of this, is that correct? Are those going to be, this is going to be firm and locked into this? Or we can make adjustments to that?
It's certainly possible that we could make adjustments. We are going to do some further study of the market just based on the information that was presented this evening. And it's possible that those could be adjusted. I think the letter of intent, like Mark said, there's a certain minimum threshold of units. But I would imagine we'll end up pretty close to what is proposed.
Can we make it wording that says affordable senior housing? Is the word affordable, or I don't really want to do low income, but affordable somewhere in there?
Well, I think you're asking a developer to come in with a business model that they feel like they can make work, and giving them more flexibility rather than less flexibility, I think is important. I agree that we have probably a need for some affordable senior housing, but I wouldn't want to strap them with some sort of language that makes it difficult for them to be financially successful. Is that I mean, make sense, or are you okay with something like that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair characterization. I mean, the quote-unquote affordable housing or affordable senior housing, that's a much different thing than what we're proposing. Our community will allow a percentage of residents to be on Medicaid and have their monthly rent paid for from Medicaid. So in that sense, there will be some of that in the building, but to actually have it be quote unquote affordable housing is a completely different thing than what we do.
Other comments, questions from the council? Mr. Luma? Thank you this evening. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
So council, it's up to you in your conversation. Do you have questions of the administration, other thoughts, concerns? Mark, how many proposals did we receive?
We received 3 proposals in October, one from Paradigm Compass, one from Guardian Angel Homes, and one from Olin Homes.
And from
Olin Homes.
Okay. And so you went through some sort of qualification process, right? And then a committee that eventually led to the selection of Paradigm Compass?
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify? There was a 2-step process. In the first step, we had 3, and then we worked with them to prepare a more detailed proposal, and only one submitted a full proposal in January. And that was Paradigm Compass.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? All right, so resolution number 2176, declaring the green property as surplus property, approval of the letter of intent to develop senior housing. Are there any persons in the audience that would like to speak to resolution 2176? Absolutely. Yeah.
Evidently spoke out of turn on the agenda. I didn't quite understand.
No, you didn't.
It was the appropriate time, so I apologize for that. So I did not actually object to the first item, I guess, as it turns out, which was for the city to dispose of the property. I think certainly that would be within the city's purview. It seems like a good idea to me at this point, 15, 16 years later. Again, I guess I just take a moment now to revisit the issue of giving it away. This choice that's been presented to the city council from the manager's office has been framed.
I'm sorry, can you recognize yourself again?
Yes, Matt France, Guardian Angel Homes.
Thank you.
And by the way, we did submit a proposal as Mr. Morgan mentioned, and it was to build only independent living there on that property. And that's because we simply don't recognize that there is any additional need for assisted living or memory care based on our performance and our census levels and our vacancies over the last several years. So back to the notion of, again, giving the property away. It was presented to the city council members as an option to sell it at $400,000 or sort of translated into this nearly $3 million revenue opportunity, which that seems like an easy choice for an individual or for a city council or anybody, a business. Who would turn away the opportunity to get $3 million? I think it was framed incorrectly, and I think it's a wrong way to look at it, because that development, it sounds like, from Paradigm Compass perspective, that will happen no matter what. They've decided, they have a market study that indicates, against everything I know about the market, but what they have in their own internal decision making, they decided they want to enter the Hermiston market, and that could be profitable for them. And they'll do that whether the city council decides, or the city decides to give them that land, or to simply sell it for $400,000. So to me, the option should not be framed as, do we give it away, or do we sell it for $400,000 or give it away, in which case it will turn into $3 million. the question to me has been, do we sell it for 400,000 or sell it for 0? Because that additional money to get up to that 3 million, that will happen organically by the development and the growth and the investment. That's also tax dollars that will happen, whether the land is given away or whether it's sold at a full market value. All those same benefits that were outlined in the presentation earlier, those are going to happen because the investment will happen and because that development and growth will happen. It's sort of decoupled or delinked from the decision to sell or give the property away. So really today I had two audiences. One, I actually met with Mr. Looney earlier before this meeting and toured him our facility and showed him some of our empty rooms. And I'm really scratching my head, as is the folks from Sun Terrace, the Regency Pacific gentleman who spoke earlier. We're really puzzled at how the appraisal company that did their market study could determine that there was a need in Hermiston for additional assisted living units and memory care, because we have all those covered, and more disparate it seems. Nonetheless, that is again an internal decision for them, but the question placed here before the city council is whether to agree to give that property away at a cost of 0 or at a price of 0. And I think there are a few reasons why that would be a bad idea. One, well, as I said, it's giving away land that the city could potentially sell for $400,000 and do whatever you deem is necessary with that. It could be used for parks. It could be used for homeless area dedication. It could be used for a whole host of many things that the city could use. Maybe additional law enforcement. I'm not sure what the council deems is necessary, but that's a lot of money that can be repurposed. And I just wanted to point that out, that linking that option of giving away versus selling at fair market value should not be linked to the outcome that will come from the increased development, because that will happen regardless. My own company, 5 years ago, we made a decision to invest $3 million in 2 new care homes here in Hermiston. And so the county, I guess the county's been receiving the benefit of that, and we did that with land that we purchased. Nobody had to give it to us to incent us. The market forces themselves were enough incentive for us. So
Thank you.
that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other? Yes.
Jackie Linton, Hermiston, and I do want to say I've heard of, what was yours name? Guardian Angel and Regency, and those are stellar places. And as I was listening to this gentleman here, I'm sorry I don't know your name, but about the employment, it's very hard. I know I've had family and even my daughter's a nurse that have worked for assisted living here, and it's very hard to keep staff. It's a high and fast turnover. So I do know that much about it. And the fact, I would like to see the senior housing built. I've said before that I didn't think the land should be given away, unless it was given to me, of course. But anyway, I'm hoping that the council will vote a no on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Any others? Okay, so before you this evening, you have a motion to adopt Resolution 2176, and lay upon the record, declaring the green property as surplus property and approval of a letter of intent to develop senior housing. Any other council comments? Can I get a motion? Yes.
I just kind of feel like we have gotten a whole lot of information from a lot of different individuals this evening, and some of it is things that I have heard before, and that, you know, I'd like to sit with, or if there's a way of, do we have to decide on this evening? Is there a way of tabling this and coming back to it? I don't.
Mr. Smith, is there a timeline on this evening?
Well, I mean, Yes and no. I mean, I think you heard Paradise Compass's calendar that they'd like to keep moving and they feel like the project is good. But there's no, it doesn't have to be made, we don't have to make a decision tonight.
So are you making a motion to table resolution 2176?
I would think so, yes. I would like to make that motion because I think that we have been given a lot of food for thought from a lot of different invested parties, including some of our community members. And I think it would be your due diligence to be mindful of that.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion to table resolution 2176. Sent us by Ms. Peterson.
Mr. Mayor?
Second by Ms. Davis. Yes.
Could we get a date? Would it be okay if we put a next meeting, table it until the next meeting type of a time frame, so we can at least have an end date?
So by next meeting.
Okay, great.
So we got a motion, a first and a second. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No.
Yes.
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 Motion passes 6-1. So I guess I don't need to ask for any other motions on that resolution, since we're tabling it until next meeting. All right, we're going to move up the Eotech site master plan approval. I asked that one to be moved up to item 10B. Mr. Smith, you want to present that one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as you see on the screen, is what we're proposing as the 20-year master plan for the Eotech property. This has been quite a long process, mostly lengthened by some of the restrictions and complications of COVID. But all of the interested parties have been able to participate and get their input into this 20-year projection. Now, the one thing I want to make sure everybody is aware of, that we don't plan to go and build everything on this map tomorrow, which I know some of our partners would like us to do that, but this gives us a map and a way to move forward. Some of the pieces that I would just highlight that help in the long term. If you look in both the upper right and the upper left corners, there's some yellow areas. Right now, those are inside the airport fence. They're not currently accessible to Eotech. What we're proposing is that those be accessed as overflow parking. We would need to come up with an agreement with the airport and some other items to make those fully functional, but I think in the long term it helps with parking challenges. Also would like to point out the long-term projection, or the projection of sports fields on the lower, the southernmost portion there, where we do a lot of overflow parking right now. And so all of these, many of these things that we've talked about in different ways. And with that, I'd be happy to kind of answer any questions or talk through any other portions of this 20-year master plan.
Mr. Smith, the process that we went through is we hired the Architect West, and part of our city-wide landscape plan. That's kind of an add-on to this conversation.
This was actually, we had a strategic plan. One of the items in that strategic plan was to develop a master plan for the property. Also of concern was landscaping and making it more beautiful up there. And so they were initially engaged to do this landscaping piece. And then we had them kind of get on board to help us develop this site master plan.
And part of that process too was to identify clearly all the parts and pieces that we currently had, where they reside, where the piping, electrical, and all that sort of stuff was.
That's correct. Along with this really doesn't show, but we have an accurate survey of all the property. So we know where all the buildings were located, all the piping and different things, so that when we go to do construction in the future, that we will have less chance of doing something to damage the existing infrastructure.
And so it was a fairly lengthy process, like
Yeah.
18 months or something.
Yes.
All right. How about public comment on the Eotech site master plan, and then we'll come back to the council.
Mayor Grotzman, clarification, I get at least 5 minutes, or?
You get 5 minutes. Thank you.
Mike Kay, Farm City Pro Rodeo Board member and member of the Eotech Advisory Committee. I want to first start out with a couple of things. On behalf of community user groups, we came to council a year, 18 months ago, and asked you to pause the process and to do some due diligence and send us back the directive to come up with a plan that can be agreed on by all groups. This is going to be surprising to some of you. Thank you. Okay? Thank you for doing that. Thank you for directing us back and letting us proceed in a collaborative group with all users of this property. By doing that, I think we came up with a plan and a model that I know the Eotech Advisory Board, myself as a Farm City Pro Rodeo member board, and speaking for the Fair Committee members, I think we've got a great plan here. We're very supportive of this, and again, we appreciate the board taking the time and pausing, and you did, and sending us back to come up with this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Others? Okay. No representative. Okay. So, council, sitting on this process, Mr. Barone is also on the committee with me since the inception. It's not been an easy process. We've had some pretty strong wills and all parties present at the table, all with the common desire to do what's best for the community and specifically for their independent agencies in which they're represented. And so those sometimes come with conflict, and we sometimes butted heads and sometimes got sideways a little bit. And so it was a very challenging process in the long run, and I agree with Mr. Kay. It was good and mindful of the council to give it some more time, engage a professional site plan engineer, and see exactly what we have and what the needs of the community are, and how we can grow into this property. You know, it's hard to believe that we're fighting over 95 acres when we used to exist on 7, 15, yeah. So now we're fighting over 5 times that. So it's grown to that capacity. We've had several years now of experience to see what we have and how it's functioning, where it's not functioning, and to kind of see what we could envision it to look like. And so it's been nice to have some extra time to look through that. And so, I'd like to thank several people that aren't on the committee anymore. Steve Williams for his leadership. He's been instrumental in the process. Steve Eldridge was a committee member. Lucas Wagner was a committee member for the fair. We have several committee members that are still there and present and have participated through the process. Nate, you sat on there for a while. No, not on this part. And so lots of different community members have participated and helped us kind of massage this into what you're seeing today, including community usage groups. And you see a lot of soccer field designations on there and lacrosse field designations. We also talked about future indoor arena. That was a priority for a lot of the user groups, and RV parking or RV camping was a source of contention for us. And so we've crafted a facility now that everybody is in unanimous agreement with and can live with and has agreed to make work. And so as Mr. Smith presented earlier, it's a 20-year vision. So, as resources are identified and as priorities shift and move forward, hopefully this is what the future of Eotech looks like and gives us a goal or a model to work towards. So I'm proud of the process that we went through. I'm thankful to the members for their participation and their due diligence and hard work on this. I think we've come up with a resource that the community will be able to use for the next 75 years. Other comments from the council? Thoughts? Ms. Meyer?
It's been a long, contentious battle to get here, and this looks to be the end result here, that everyone is willing to sign off on it and happy with the placement, then I think it's a good deal.
Yeah, it's unanimous. It's unanimous. Committee's unanimous in there.
For sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Other comments from the council?
I'm glad to see it come to completion, and I think great job for all those that participated and worked the tails off to get it to this. And I think we're, long run, going to be very proud of this as a work in progress of where we're headed. So my hat's off. Great job.
It's not without compromise and collaboration, and all of us kind of giving and taking a little bit, because there are some things that I think certain groups would like differently. There's also some things that they got maybe in the process too, and so the city, I think, should be applauded for its efforts as well, from the standpoint that 18 months ago we could have signed off on this, said, nope, this is the way it's going to be, take it or leave it. And you didn't. And you just took a step back and you allowed the process to work. And I think we came up with an acceptable outcome that's going to be mutually agreed upon. And when we got all parties working together, in the long run, we're going to get a better outcome. Other comments from the council? So, how about other public comment? I'll take a motion to adopt the Eotech master plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Bremer, seconded by Councilor Spicer Coon, that we accept the Eotech master plan as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Eotech. And thank you for our partners in the process. I'm going to also take executive privilege here again and move up Miss Mooney. She showed up and she's early. We were going to save you the last, but since you're here, we'll move you up. How about that?
Fabulous.
All right. Welcome back, Dr. Mooney.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here tonight. Tomorrow's a big day for us. We will have all of our students K-12 in buildings for in-person learning for the first time in 13 months. So that's very exciting. And also tomorrow we are having groundbreaking ceremonies for both Rocky Heights Elementary and Loma Vista Elementary. So big day tomorrow for the school district and for our community. Definitely. It's been a long haul, but looking forward to having all of our kids back for sure. So got that going on. We're continuing to see progress on our bond projects. The Bond Oversight Committee met last week and had a conversation about where we are. Still very early, I guess, in our process when we look at the groundbreaking of tomorrow of our two major projects. And we had some good luck on our bids that came in. So the projects are looking good as we look toward the future. Questions for me?
What's your expected attendance numbers tomorrow? I mean, as far as kids participating in actual in-classroom attendance?
Well, I looked at the enrollment tonight, so I'm going to say somewhere around 5,500 plus is my goal that we've got them all. We do have When we transitioned to in-person learning, we have students that are still enrolled in the Hermiston School District that stuck with Hermiston Online, which is the fully virtual model. We did have students that, when we had to transition to comprehensive distance learning at the beginning of the year, transferred out of the district to other online charters. So we are seeing some change in our enrollment. So definitely looking forward to having some full buildings tomorrow. Things will look different. Everyone on site will have masks on. Students can be 3 feet apart for classroom while they're in the classroom instruction, but they still need to be 6 feet apart during lunchtime, so when they're eating and have their masks down. So we'll have kids eating outside in classrooms and all over the place during lunchtime. We will be sending a grab-and-go breakfast home at the end of the day, so students will be able to have their breakfast for the next day. We are continuing with the summer meal program we've had, so meals, both breakfast and lunch will be free to all students, but the breakfast, again, will go home at the end of the day, so the student will get tomorrow's breakfast to eat at home. Just logistics of managing kids eating on site and what that looks like is a little daunting. I guess it's a lot right now, but we're going to work through it at lunchtime for sure, and looking forward to that.
So no longer hybrid, huh?
We are not in hybrid.
Classroom or online?
Yep.
Gotcha. Cool. And
Full
how about athletic update? Where are you at on that?
We are in spring season right now. So we have boys and girls tennis, boys soccer, softball, baseball, track going on right now. And hopefully we get to the point where we'll be able to have our winter sports at the end of the year, which they were pushed off, just their indoor sports, so basketball, wrestling, those sports. We are also starting tomorrow 3-week seasons at the middle school that will look different, but looking at ways to re-engage our students. So our middle school students will start tomorrow with a 3-week fall sports season that will be intramural in nature, but really looking for ways to re-engage our students.
Other activities, choir, band, drama, any of those sort of things still going on?
Those are going on, and in those areas, definitely our teachers are having to be creative, particularly band, choir, because as you expel more air, you need to be further apart, and there are different requirements. So those activities are all still going on, clubs, organizations, all of that. So they look different, but looking, like I said, for ways to re-engage our students. We are also, hopefully tomorrow we'll get more guidance from the state regarding the summer learning and childcare investment, and what that will look like for school districts, how those programs will work, and the partnerships will work. We have reached out to the city preliminarily with regard to like some lessons and how we can partner to make develop and implement a program that will be more comprehensive, not just academically focused with those new funds that are coming.
So as kids are transitioning back to the classroom, you're 7 months, 8 months into the school year, and some of those kids have academically struggled. They haven't participated, they're way behind, they're failing classes. What are the rules this year on passing a kid as far as moving up, transitioning from class to class?
So I think it's important to know that all of our students have unfinished learning, because they have not, none of our students have had the same opportunities that they had when we were in person over a year ago. So for all of our students, we have unfinished learning. The state has come out with some guidance around graduation requirements. So for this year's graduating class, the class of 21, and the class of 22, so next year's graduating class, there's not an essential skills requirement, which is the state assessment. So those pieces, the state is making some, there's some give in those areas, but really it's professional. Our teachers are professionals, and they know the standards and when students are able to demonstrate learning. And we've had to, throughout all of this, things have looked different. So definitely, like I said, the end mark isn't where it would have been had we had students in classrooms all year long. We will. Students do have until August 31st to be a part of this year's graduating class, so to complete those requirements, if you will, for graduation. So this summer we'll offer credit recovery like we have every summer. So looking at lots of different ways to help our students be successful, given the fact that there is unfinished learning due to the situation we've been in.
Well, I'm, for one, super excited for you and our kids and our families that have, I mean, it's been a year, right? It's been a complete year that our kids have been home.
March 13th was the last day.
And so, you know, I think, unfortunately, some of those kids have been hurt the worst in this process, and those families, and it's been a struggle for the last year. So, super excited to see them get back in the classroom. Excited for our communities and our teachers and families, and our numbers are going down, so lots of positives going on right now around kids in school and virus and stuff like that. So, how about other questions or comments, Dr. Mooney?
Question?
Yes.
I know busing probably is an issue with you. And now, are the kids now in class for a full day, or are they split shifts?
Our students will be full day. So we were in a hybrid where we had half students in the morning, half in the afternoon, but it will be full day. So all of our students will come to school for the length of day that they would have, but they went to school March 12th of 2020.
So they're having regular sized classes, weeks of classes, it's not like half and half.
Correct, regular size classes. There are some spaces that we have to look at differently, but with the 3 feet in between, or it's actually how ODE defines it is 3 feet from middle of desk to middle of desk. So with our class sizes, capacity isn't an issue for the majority of our classes. We do have some, like I said, where by the nature of the class, we'll have to look at our space a little bit differently, but our classes will be like they would have been. Busing is always an issue, and as we look at tomorrow being another first day of school, Mid-Columbia Bus Company has rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt routes for us this year with every changing schedule, and they are struggling with a driver shortage. So I wanted to just give my plug to anyone out there who's looking for a job. Midco's looking for drivers. Definitely, we can use your help. Right on up to Midco. At least we have a reference.
We've got a couple of retirees sitting up here. You know, public service.
Well, my hat's off to you. I know it's quite a task to make the switch, and so
Thank
wish
you.
you the very best.
It's been a community effort, all of us working in the same direction and doing our part to reduce our COVID cases in Umatilla County, and specifically in Hermiston. So it's been a long time coming. I'm very excited for tomorrow, for sure.
Yeah, well, congratulations to the school district and Hermiston community getting kids back in the classroom. Got some growth going on, beautiful new facility that we're developing, got the groundbreaking tomorrow. Times?
10 o'clock at Rocky Heights and 11:30 at Loma Vista.
Okay, 10 o'clock Rocky Heights and Loma Vista at 11. And I believe it's a 10th Street entrance to Loma Vista.
Yes.
Okay, so if you can attend, that would be great. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other comments from the council? Thanks for joining us. Good luck tomorrow.
Yes.
Can't wait.
All right, we are now at resolution number 2177, Funland Playground Financing Agreement. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This, as the council directed us to move forward with the Funland project, part of that was a fundraising effort that we have used in other projects, which would allow people maybe to commit a larger sum of money, but over a period of time. And so we knew at some point we would need to get some financing to help us be able to insert the capital into the project, but still go forward. And this is that point. We're really grateful for a partnership with UEC through a USDA program that they have available. And so it will allow us to borrow $250,000 It gives us a long time to pay it back. Our goal is that would be paid back in under 5 years, because that's the time period, the longest time period we gave to any of the pledges was a 5-year time period. And it's a zero interest loan, so it's a great opportunity. And the best part is, as we pay it back, UEC is then able to use 100% of that money that we pay back to then again make more loans to businesses and to create opportunities in our community to increase economic activity. So what we're asking for tonight is approval of this resolution that will allow us to enter into a $250,000 financing agreement that will then be the final piece of funding to go into the Funland playground project. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Council, any questions? Any public comments on this? Okay. So before you is a resolution number 2177, Funland Playground Financing Agreement. Can I get a motion to adopt resolution 2177, lay it upon the record?
So moved. Second.
Then moved by Councilor Brimmer, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we approve resolution number 2177 and lay it upon the record. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Southeast 7th Street Sewer Main Replacement, Mr. Smith.
And I'll ask Mr. Morgan to handle this.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This action will award a contract to Signco Construction of Hermiston to replace approximately 2,000 linear feet of undersized sewer main for just under $600,000. This project has been included on the long-range capital improvement plan for the sewer department for the past several years. This actually represents phases 2 and 3 of kind of a larger phased project. We completed phase 1 of this sewer main expansion project here a couple of years ago. This is just simply carrying that out. We designed the project throughout the winter, recently bid it, and Signco was the low bidder, and our engineers, Danderson Perry, recommend award. Based on award of the contract this evening, it's likely that construction would begin in late summer and proceed through this fall, complete by October.
Questions from the council? Any public comment on the Southeast 7th Street sewer main replacement? Seeing none, can I get a motion to award the Southeast 7th Street sanitary sewer improvement project to Signco Construction?
So moved.
Second.
Then motion by Ms. Davis, seconded by Councilor Fletcher, and we approve the Southeast 7th Street sanitary sewer improvement project to Signco Construction. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Who's got the master control of the lights?
I don't know.
She who must be obeyed.
Get that letter back?
I'm surprised that spotlight didn't just shine down in your ward earlier. All right, third quarter financial 2021 investment report.
Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor.
Tate.
I'd like to bring you up to speed on what's happened in the market since the last time we talked after the second quarter of the fiscal year. To give you an understanding of what's going on in the markets, in February and March, we had a total of $175,000 or $170,000 worth of investments called because people were refinancing with such low rates. We were lucky that we were able to reinvest those dollars at not much of a difference in interest, but yet the market is moving very unsteadily in that regard. We're hoping it moves a little better going forward. We'll see what happens. Got to find the right button. You know,
Is it turned off?
which way? Which way, Larry?
Might have gone to sleep. Is it
Hold it. This one here. There we go. We have our portfolio broken down on the corporate bonds into what I call our financial sector.
You will see a number of these bonds are with U.S. Bank, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. The bonds that had been called, we reinvested 25,000 of them in a JP Morgan 3-month LIBOR plus 100% basis points rate. The par value when the value of the bonds were sold was $1,386,000. The market value now is $1,432,000. That's basically, we're earning 3.32% on those dollars. Now, if you have any type of savings account anywhere or any kind of investments of your own in corporate bonds, that's a really good rate as far as appreciation over par. Second part of the portfolio we call the energy sector with Shell, Chevron, and Exxon. The combination of those holdings over par is 6.9%. Now, that's not to say we would make $550,000 were we to sell them today, but we'd come close and we would not lose money. The 3 tenets of investing is never lose the corpus, be able to get to it if you need to, and then try to make a little money. That's not a bad rate in these markets right now. The third is what I call the consumer discretionary staple. You'll notice we all own Apple and Walmart. They're at 7% over par plus. The total corporate portfolio produces almost a 5% return when you throw all of them together. This is why we have corporate bonds in place. Then we look at what we call our callables and agencies and treasuries. These are backed by the full faith and credit of the government. And because the market for these instruments is so down, if you can find something that pays 50 basis points, you found a winner. Our overall price above par is 0.7%. That's good right now. I will advise the council, if you look over here to the right, if I can find the right button that tells, whoops. We have 2 investments that are going to mature in November for over $175,000. I am hoping, against all the hope that there can be, that the yield curve moves in our favor by November so that I can reinvest these at least at what we have them at now. I think if the economy heats up, it probably will, but we have a significant, you can see we only have $1.8 million in the portfolio, and when $1,080,000 of it comes off in November, that could have a significant impact. And we have to maintain these types of investments per the investment policy, at least a percentage of the portfolio. Then, thanks to your wisdom in allowing me to invest in municipals, we have a municipal portfolio that right now is returning 5.6 over par value as far as the value of the investments. This has been a very good performing portion of the portfolio. Thank you for your wisdom in allowing us to do that. Finally, the total portfolio that's investable is just over $5 million. The value is $5,280,000. When we throw in LGIP at $3,300,000, we have a total investments at March 31 of $8,406,000 and some change. I would point out the metrics here. We have cash reserves of $8,000, which is less than even 0.01% of the portfolio. Corporates are 28, target is no higher than 35. We have no restrictions on agencies and treasuries, we're at 21.5. Municipals, we're supposed to stay to 10. As our discussion in the end of the second quarter, we're a little bit over that. I think that will work itself out over the next 6 months. Total LGIP, we're having 40%, 100% of the portfolio. I talk about this particular feature, total liquidity, full faith and credit. If we were to take all of the LGIP and all of the portfolio and agencies and treasuries and cash, literally within 24 hours, I could have the $5,000,001 in hand. That says, I'm not going to lose money, I can get to it quick, and I'm going to make a little bit on it, hopefully. That represents 60% of the portfolio, 60.1%. Net market gain of the portfolio in this quarter is just a shade short of $180,000. And I think that concludes, that's a 3.52% return on market value. Weighted average maturity of the portfolio cannot exceed 2.5 years. We're at 2.3 right now. The percentage of the portfolio that's callable is 75%, is no more than. We're at 45% of the portfolio is callable. We saw that activity during the quarter when these three issues were called. People were refinancing. At present, I'm very comfortable where we are given this market. I'm hoping that the economy does start to pick up as we get a handle on COVID and people are not afraid to get out and spend money and do things and get things rolling again. With that, I'd stand to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. It was a very good report.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it seems like we could maybe move some things around there too to take advantage of the corporate, since we're under percentage in there. We also have some significant dollars that are coming our direction here from the ARP funds. And I don't know that we have a plan to do anything with those immediately. So some of those funds could be also reinvested into projects like this.
Yeah, we anticipate that there will be a good chunk of the first payment of the ARP funds that will become part of that investment portfolio. But just to inform the council, I plan to come at our next meeting with sort of the staff's game plan as far as how we intend to approach those ARP funds and the overall availability of other funds from both the state and federal level of government.
Will that be a work session discussion, or will that be regular?
It'll probably be within the regular session.
Any questions, comments for Mr. Kay from the council? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kay.
Thank you.
All right, committee reports. Committee reports, anybody?
I had a library board meeting and there's no longer a meeting room downstairs, and the Lanham room is no longer in the library. So talked about public meeting spaces and perhaps setting up a schedule. There was one meeting room, so they're gonna some discussions about getting that being used by the public. Some policy discussions at the library.
Thank you, Councilor Day. Any other committee reports? No? Okay. Yes, Mr. Brown?
Thank you. So I have the privilege of being part of the Hermiston Community Vision Action Plan Committee. And last Thursday we were able to meet, and it was my first time joining the committee. And it was, I was pleasantly surprised of all the different people that were, invited to be part of that, and very excited to be talking about the type of engagement that we will try to do to inform the community of, the different plan that the city has. So I'm very thankful to be part of that. I learned a lot, and I think more information will come. I also am very happy that we are getting a spot where people will be able to drop off their payments. I think some of the folks have been missing that since the City Hall has been torn down. And I also appreciate the partnership with Eotech to be able to provide a kiosk for customers to be able to make it easier for them to make the payments in the vestibule area. So thank you for those that were involved in the discussions to see that happen. And then I'm also pleasantly surprised how fast, the construction or the, the tear down of the old City Hall has gone, and I look forward to seeing, all the changes there as well. I was asked, how long it would take for the parking lot that has been, I think it's going to be under construction here shortly, but I know that some of the businesses are being affected by that, so do we have a time frame for that?
Yeah, the stated goal by the contractor is to turn over that, what we're calling the west parking lot, back again on June 1st. So we'll see a lot more activity in the alley and in that parking lot during this week, and then they'll be going a lot full steam on that portion of the project.
Are you done, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Okay. So I think Ms. Braun moved on to the council report. I want to make sure that there aren't any committee reports that are still. Okay. Yeah. All right. You're just excited.
I am just excited. I'm sorry.
There's a lot going on.
Jumping ahead. Sorry about that.
So are there other city committee reports people would like to speak to? So mayor's report. I don't have a lot to talk about this week. I continue to participate with the LOC and legislative committee, just staying on top of legislation and making sure that you guys take a look at the LOC's weekly newsletter that they put out. And they also give legislative guidance as far as which ones are priorities. And right now, it's more about defense, and they've done a good job at controlling bad legislation that could impact our community. So nothing too exciting right now. Mr. Smith commented to our legislators recently on some legislation, as I did. But staying on focus with those and taking a look at those once in a while. They send out legislative alerts for you to engage with your representative and senator to indicate support for that. And it's also nice when it's personalized and you can tie it to something specific within your community, where you have identified an issue. And I think this last issue had to do more about sanitary wipes and sewer system and how really bad for our sewer system and cost it is to our municipal government, and that turns into a ratepayer problem. And so legislation to address that issue and why that's impactful to our community. But there are lots of other issues that LOC is tracking and following. So it's a great opportunity for you guys to participate at that level and also let legislators know how important it is to you. We participated at the mayor's and city manager's West End meeting. We continue to have conversations regionally around that. And I think, Mr. Smith, are you going to talk tonight about regionally working together on maybe some projects? I think that would be good as well. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to talk about. Counselors, any other counselors want to talk to that? Mr. Kerr?
So one of the things that's kind of near and dear to my heart is this week is the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, my wife being a member of those folks. And I have an article real quick I'd like to read. It says, our center, like many others from the past year, adjusting to masks, extra cleaning, social distancing, numerous changes in personnel. What sets Umatilla County Sheriff's Office dispatch apart is how resilient our staff during this time. Our center went from being somewhat understaffed to being critically understaffed overnight. Due to this staffing crisis, the team has been working mandatory overtime nearly 3 out of 4 weeks of the month since September. This meant our staff was working with their work families more than their own families. Add to this the hiring of 6 new staff who were in the various stages of training to increase call loads. The new trainees quickly became valuable members of the team. There were a number of them released for a specific channel just due to sheer needs of the center. Despite the tremendous stress levels, added work, and uncertainty surrounding COVID, the superheroes of Umatilla County never wavered one step. Each one reported to work for their shift, ready to go, willing to help the other trainees, and the trainers were busy, ensuring the safety and well-being of the communities, safety responders, and fellow dispatchers. The calls of service not only rose, but the nature and severity, as did the nature and severity of numerous suicides, elevated domestic disputes, search and rescue incidents, and increased citizen contacts by safety responder personnel were all dealt with professional assistance. Throughout it all, the extremely talented and dedicated dispatchers of Umatilla County Sheriff's Office took it all in stride, continuing to move forward but never compromising safety or protocols. Dispatchers faced many personal and professional sacrifices almost on a daily basis. At times it seemed there was no light at the end of the tunnel. However, when one of them felt too overwhelming, it was too overwhelming, another telecommunicator realized it and picked up that person, giving them a much needed breather, as well as taking on one more item. Each one did so in a manner of professionalism with respect and showed the utmost ethical behavior when conducting business. The staff never wavered in their continued support of the dispatcher center and each other. The men and women of Umatilla County deserve a huge thank you. I am extremely proud of each and every one of you. The telecommunicators of the Umatilla County Sheriff's Department are the epitome of what true superheroes are. And that's signed, thank you, Captain Karen Primer. As a user of their services over the last 37 years, I can say that they are all superheroes in that respect. They give it all. So, as this week is National Telecommunicator, or it's National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, they're the voices in the comm, they're the ones behind the scenes, they're the first responders you never see. So, in this public forum, I'd like to say thank you to all of them and to my wife. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, thank you to our public safety dispatch crew and I know the Sheriff's Department and the dispatch Sheriff's Department do a great job for our county and our community. I understand recently retired dispatcher, now county commissioner, got called up to support your group. Yeah. You were running so short, so.
He offered and I said yes. I think he thought I was guilty.
Well, good for him for filling in with his skill set that he still retains and was able to help support frontline. So thank you to him as well and to all the public safety dispatchers in the county. Other councilors? No. Okay, Mr. Smith.
Yes, so as you mentioned, I've been working with the city managers of the other West End, Umatilla County cities, Echo, Stanfield, Umatilla, as well as one of our county commissioners, Commissioner Dorman, to be a little bit more organized and work together a little bit more as we approach legislative things, as well as in this time of funding that seems to be coming in large amounts, to see what we can do to collaborate and potentially increase the amount of funding that comes to this portion of the state and to this portion of the county. I anticipate that all those other communities are actually reviewing an MOU that we would then bring to the council to ask your approval of, hopefully at our next meeting, but that will just give us an opportunity to work together. We already do it a lot, but this will formalize it, I think, a little bit better and gives us a chance to be a little more thoughtful. So that's been going on, and we're looking to kind of go to roughly a monthly meeting right now. Maybe at different times we would go to more frequent than that, but that's what we're looking at. Then just wanted to let the council know about a few other dates coming up. April 30th, we had to reschedule our unleashing of the Bark Park to April 30th. That's again a Friday afternoon or maybe midday, Larry, is that right?
It's going to be, we'll announce it, we're shooting for 3 o'clock on April 30th.
Okay, so late afternoon. Then just wanted to, and Lily will get a calendar invite out, but our budget committee meeting, we're looking at May 20th. So if you could put that on your calendar, and Lily will send that out as a reminder as well. And then I wanted to just, we've been pushing really hard. Larry and his staff have been working very hard to try to get Funland to open before the end of May. It looks like that's not going to work. We're going to be ready for everything except the surface, the poured-in-place surface, and anticipate them coming on June 1st to begin that installation with about 2 weeks to do that. So We're looking potentially now at an official opening, maybe July 4th, to kind of celebrate in the park. But before that, a soft opening of Funland mid-June. So, you know, I really appreciate all the work that Larry and his staff have been doing. And if you haven't been by there to see, it's amazing. There's a lot of stuff there. Kids are going to have a great time. There's a lot of great things to play on, and it's going to be a tremendous asset to the community. And that's all that I have.
Larry, I've driven by the park, I check it out pretty regularly. The Native American village, when is that installation going to start? I know that that's one of the pieces that still is not been completed or even started, it looks like.
Right. Well, Mayor, next time stop and you can help us assemble it. But
it's there, it's ready to be assembled.
We're working from the back forward. That's just the logical progression. And so because the teepees are going to be right up front, they're going to be the last ones in.
Okay.
So we're now putting in storefronts on both kind of the north and south end of the playground, and then some of the finishing pieces, including the teepees, will be coming in right after that. There's just a lot there.
I just want to make sure that that wasn't an issue or a problem.
It's not.
We're still moving forward with the design and all that sort of stuff. So
Yep, the design's the same.
I would agree with City Manager Smith. The kids should not have a reason to be bored on that park. Yeah, there's plenty to do. Anything else for the good of the order? We're adjourned.